All right. My name is Ben Lucart, and I work on a research team with Dr. Fessman and his wife Anya Fessman. Our research is on how businesses navigate socio-political issues. Our most recent project focuses around corporate activism, CEO advocacy, and CEO activism. These subjects are closely tied to corporate social responsibility, which I will call CSR, and social movement organizations, which I'll refer to as CMOs, SMOs. This presentation will show how all of these subjects relate, explain how we're expanding the knowledge on these topics, and recommend potential research for the future. Corporate activism, CEO advocacy, and CEO activism are phrases describing when companies get involved in a controversial socio-political issue. Corporate activism is when the entire company takes a firm stance on a controversial issue. It includes some instances of CEO advocacy and activism, but not all of them. CEO advocacy occurs when a CEO speaks publicly about a socio-political issue. It is strictly a matter of public communication and maybe some donations. The company doesn't change its strategy or purpose. CEO activism is when the CEO of a company speaks about an issue publicly and then changes the company's strategy. An example of CEO activism that wasn't corporate activism would be when former CEO of Papa John's, John Schnatter, stepped down after commenting about the NFL national anthem protests and then pulled the NFL shield logo from all of Papa John's advertising. This wasn't corporate activism because it clearly didn't represent the company's interests. Otherwise, John Schnatter would not have stepped down. But it is corporate activism because John Schnatter took a public stance on a controversial issue and then changed some of the company's strategy. American corporations have seen a trend of becoming more involved in controversial issues. The numbers easily demonstrate why this is happening. According to CU Activism in 2017, a big survey done that was called High Noon in the C-Suite, 47% of millennials believe CEOs have a responsibility to speak out about issues that are important to society. 51% of millennials said they would be more willing to buy from a company whose CEO speaks out on an issue they agree with. 44% of millennials said they would be more loyal to their organizations if the CEO took a public platform on a hotly debated issue. And we see that a company actually has quite a bit of a financial risk by not taking a financial controversial stance. When a CEO does not speak about an issue, it causes a company to risk a 21% chance of sales decline, a 21% chance of boycotts, and a 20% chance of financial hardship. So what these stats are showing us is that the majority of the market is actually going to care a lot about a company taking a stance on social political issues. So our research question is, um, does CEO advocacy lead to CEO activism? And does CEO activism lead to corporate activism? We're investigating three hypotheses. First, the majority of CEOs identified as engaged in CEO advocacy talk the talk, but they do not walk the walk. They do not engage in CEO activism. CEOs engaged in CEO activism use the annual report and CSR to support their activism. Basically saying if a CEO is going to be an activist, it's going to reflect in the company's reports. Consistent CEO activism leads to corporate activism as indicated by a change in the company's mission statement reflecting the outlook. So basically, if the CEO takes a controversial stance on the issue, the rest of the company will as well. Our method is a conceptual analysis and a content analysis of CCO socio-political statements in the US, such as press releases, the annual reports, CSR reports, and mission statements of Fortune 100 companies. We will be looking at a sample of CEO activists of Fortune 100 companies with a minimum 2-year tenure from 2014 to 2019. Our measurements focus on companies' mission statements, CSR reports, and annual reports. We're also looking at instances of CEO advocacy and/or CEO activism. The way Fortune 100 companies frame their CSR, I have collected the mission statements of all Fortune 100 companies, and I've looked through a significant amount of their CSR and annual reports. As a result, we don't have measurements on the instance of CEO activism. However, I noticed a few interesting trends in the company's CSR. They seem to be pretty predictable. Finance businesses almost always focus on community. Retail corporations tend to promote social justice issues. Energy companies, of course, talk about sustainability for days upon days, and tech corporations seem to be framed about striving for a better future, and media businesses, of course, focused on diversity. While I was doing for research for Dr. Fessman on SMOs, I found out they have become easier to form with 21st century communication technology. Dr. Fessman and I have been preparing the paper, The Spiral Model of Public Communications, for publishing. In that paper, he outlines 8 steps or phases a SMO goes through to achieve sustained societal change. SMOs can accomplish many of these steps by only using the internet or communication tools such as social media, video conference, and online database, etc., make SMOs more effective most of the time. You saw earlier, a business has a 21% chance of facing boycotts for not taking a stance on an issue. People can slander a business's reputation while sitting at home. Individuals can make websites, Twitter threads, and blog posts attacking corporations. SMOs are larger and more effective than ever before. Think about the size of the LGBTQ movement, Me Too, and Black Lives Matter. They have the manpower, the platform, and the voice to cut into a company's reputation and profits. When a business's reputation and profits are faced by a tsunami of public opinions, a company will protect themselves in any way possible. It will try to ride the wave by publishing lengthy CSR reports, websites, and press releases, but sometimes that isn't enough. Corporations are faced with situations where they must take a public, controversial stand. When that happens, they need to know what to do, or else they can easily find themselves drowning. After we document instances of corporate activism, CEO activism, and advocacy, I recommend researching how each instance of corporate and CEO activism affected companies' profits, since it will help corporate executives and communication specialists. Understanding how the public responded to the actions of corporations in the past decade will be invaluable when it comes to protecting a company's reputation and profits. Knowledge could also be useful in corporate law and lobbying when the outcomes can cost a corporation millions of dollars. All right, so leave me some questions. I'm happy to answer them. Have a great day.